Mindy. Welcome in.
Hi, good morning. I'm in Jackson, New Jersey. So my question is about
All
the
right, New
war.
Jersey.
Yeah. My question is about the war. So I was a baby by 9/11. I don't have any memories of Afghanistan, Iraq. And I've been hearing a lot of comparisons in both directions. You hear the administration pushing back and saying this is not Iraq. We're not going to be there for a long time. And then you hear people in the commentary saying this is exactly what they said at the beginning of Iraq. They said it wasn't going to take a long time, and now it is. So my question is, what comparisons or similarities do you see to between now and the start of the Iraq War, and what differences do you see, or can you predict the way that this will play out?
Mindy, that's brilliant. And you speak for tens of millions wondering about that exact thing, including, as you point out, younger people who don't have the real time fingertip feel for how it went. So thank you for that. Larry, please go into your PhD mode and explain to Mindy similarities and differences.
A couple of different, and I am old enough, and I have children your age, Mindy. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. A couple of huge differences. First of all, the engagement with Iraq involved, I believe, 200,000 ground troops that were employed there, because the intent was not just to depose the leadership there, but then to be the stabilizing force for the transition to a new leadership. That doesn't seem to be the case here. We certainly don't have that amount of ground troops poised on the border of Iran. There may be a few thousand ground troops on those ships waiting to hit the shores if they need to for very specific targeted missions. Number one, that's a big part of it. Number two, you're wrong when people say that they told us Iraq wouldn't take long, but then it did. It depends on what the it is. If the it is neutralizing the threat to America and her allies and getting rid of the leadership, that didn't take long in Iraq. What took long was then the decision to be a permanent security force in that space. That took a long time, and I don't think there's any indication from the Trump administration that that's part of this plan. And number three, and I think most importantly, what really ended up being the bloodiest part of the Iraq engagement that really hurt us over the years and decades was the fact that Iran and the terrorist regime in Iran started creating IEDs, roadside bombs, and sending their forces and supplying the terrorists in Iraq. One great thing about the effort in Iran is going to be that we won't have Iran on the other side of the border meddling in the process. That's a big part of it. The coalition of Arab nations here is much stronger, and Iran is going to be neutralized, and Iran has been the problem in the region. So
Larry,
that will be the argument that the Trump administration will make.
Larry, that was brilliant. Mindy, anything you want to follow up with Larry on his answer to your question?
Um, yeah, just as far as the goals of the administration here, as it compares to Iraq, would you say that regime change is probably not on the list of, let's say there are four goals, which is like no nukes, no missiles, no navy, and more about neutralizing the threat and less about regime change in this situation as opposed to Iraq?
Yeah, so again, there's the party line answer to your question, and I think the reality answer. I'll give you the reality answer. Even if it wasn't a specific goal of this military strike to have regime change, our military will not disengage, and we won't be satisfied until there is a regime change. Whether we're instituting that or whether and controlling it or not, I think is the secondary question. But I don't see the Trump administration disengaging from this if we're just going to have a new round of mullahs choosing a supreme leader who will then institute a terrorist state once again. That, by definition, means there needs to be regime change. So I know it's sort of a political nuanced answer, but they're going to say, no, our goal wasn't regime change, but they're not going to be satisfied unless there is regime change, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Larry. Kevin, anything you want to add?
Yeah, Mindy, it's a great question. I think, the size and scale of this is different too. And we got to remember, this is a country that's massive compared to Iraq, right? 93 million Iranians, a geographic area that twice the size of Texas. And I think in the coming days, to Larry's point, one of the comparisons to Iraq was we obviously went in there, took out Saddam, took some time to find him, but then also took out his entire government, right? So, and fired the entire military, right? So that was, I think, a big mistake on our part because Iraqis had relied on this government, similar to what we're seeing in Venezuela. We just took out one individual and left the government in place. The question in the coming weeks will be, where is the pain point for this administration? What do they agree to? Okay, we've stopped the nuclear thing, we've stopped the missile thing, we've taken out the Navy. Are they willing to then deal with some of the moderate elements, if you can even call them that, within the current government? Again, a government ruling over 93 million people, or do we attempt to take out the entire regime from the Ayatollah on down? And then what does that look like? Does that look like another Iraq situation where you have a lot of civil servants that have been fired and let go, and the infrastructure collapses under it, giving rise to ISIS and other elements within society? So again, I think the shock and all element is similar. No troops on the ground right now as compared to Iraq. But again, where do we go from here in terms of the actual running of the government in the weeks and months to come?
If I
Mindy,
can say, Kevin makes a great point here, because one of the big strategic errors for the Bush administration at the time was that anyone connected to the Ba'ath Party in Iraq was ineligible to be a part of the new government going forward, and it was a one-party state. So that meant anybody who had any institutional knowledge.
The people running the local water
system.
system were out.
That's right.
The local utilities were gone. Any element of that.
Hey, want to be part of the two-way community all the time? Hit the subscribe button. Great video clips like this, plus conversations like no other, full episodes and more, always available on this channel. You got to hit subscribe to never miss a thing.
You can now listen to full episodes of The Morning Meeting and Two Way Tonight on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.